Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and his Democratic challenger Charlie Crist met for the only debate of the Florida governor's race last night. Crist pestered DeSantis on his presidential ambitions. Let's take a listen.
And let me remind the viewers, he wouldn't even answer you if he would stay 4 years if you re-elect him as your governor. You're running for governor. You're asking them to vote for you for governor. At a minimum, you ought to be able to tell them if you get re-elected, you'll serve as governor. Ron?
While DeSantis refused to directly answer the question, he used the question to take a jab at his opponent.
Well, listen, I know that Charlie's interested in talking about 2024 and Joe Biden, but I just want to make things very, very clear. The only worn-out old donkey I'm looking to put out to pasture is Charlie Crist.
Crist and DeSantis also traded jabs on a number of issues. Let's listen to some more of that.
You have people that are teaching, and actually his running mate has said this in the past, that teaching the United States was built on stolen land. That is inappropriate for our schools. It's not true. And I'm happy that we're going to be able to have accurate history, and we're going to make sure that we honor those who have sacrificed so that we can be free.
There's an old expression, Ron. Those who don't know history may be condemned to repeat it. Usually people use that in reference to the Holocaust. It could just as easily be referenced to slavery in our country. It happened. It's a fact. We shouldn't have a whitewash approach to educating our children.
He said you need to force people to shelter in their own homes. That would have destroyed the state of Florida. That would have caused our tourism industry to go into the toilet. It would have locked out millions of kids from school. I rejected Charlie Crist's lockdown letter. I kept this state open, and I kept this state free.
You're the only governor in the history of Florida that's ever shut down our schools. You're the only governor in the history of Florida that shut down our businesses. I never did that as governor. You're the one who's the shutdown guy. We need to have somebody who is at the helm that understands it's important to listen to science, to do what's right, to utilize common sense. You don't just shut down at the outset, and then when it's, politically convenient for you, you want to open back up to score political points.
I just think we're better when everybody counts. I understand not everyone's going to be born in perfect circumstances, but I would like to see everybody have a shot. I'm proud of the 15 weeks that we did. I know Charlie Crist opposes that, even though the baby is fully formed, has a heartbeat, can feel pain, and can suck their thumb.
I don't want to ban abortion. I want to make sure we keep a woman's right to choose available to the women of the state of Florida. And I want to make sure that we don't have a governor in the future who wouldn't even allow exceptions for rape or incest.
Meanwhile, a new ABC News Ipsos poll found that 72% of Republicans support DeSantis and say he should have a, quote, good deal of influence in the future direction of the GOP, while only 64% said the same about Trump, which is very interesting. Joining us now to discuss is state capitol reporter for WFLA in Florida, Libbey Dean. Welcome, Libbey.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Yes, thanks for joining us. So I know you were covering this debate. What were your takeaways?
I mean, as you can see from those clips, the takeaways and the jabs were there, as they always are in these kinds of debates. But the main takeaways are the presidential run. I think that is the most clippable moment from the debate that people are going to see the most of. But also, I mean, they touched on several hot topics of abortion, LGBTQ rights, and several controversial things that DeSantis has talked about for the last 4 years of his gubernatorial reign.
Do voters, do you think, have the sense that they really are, if they're picking DeSantis, they're picking him for 2 years because he is absolutely going to run? I thought it was interesting that Charlie Crist pointed that out, because I do expect that he will run. Is that on people's minds as they're making this choice?
The thing is, when I talked because I interview a lot of state lawmakers here, and I asked that question, do you think that is going to make a difference when people really head out to the polls? And most of them say no. They're going to vote party based and stick with their party lines here. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of the polls that are coming out, that's not going to change. And then also, if it were to change, it would just be him running in 2024. And then we have the lieutenant governor lined up for that position. So I think it'll be interesting to see if more news comes out about her policies and what kind of gubernatorial, what kind of governor she would be.
Yeah, I can't see that mattering at all. That might be the kind of conversation you want to have in a primary, that I'm the one that's going to be here for 4 years and you're just using this as a launching pad for a broader political career. But I can't imagine a single person saying, oh, he's only going to be around for 2 years, let me take a Democrat instead. You know, it was interesting from listening to the clips and trying to judge the audience, judge something, glean something from the audience reaction, is that it felt like DeSantis was on really strong ground when he was talking about COVID and lockdowns. There was an interesting kind of pushback from the room when he hit on some other subjects. It sounded like he really walked into something that he didn't need to walk into, claiming that, it's wrong to acknowledge that the United States is on stolen ground. He said that's factually untrue. I mean, you can have an opinion about whether or not you should start meetings in classrooms or organizations with a land acknowledgement. You can think that that's, cringe or not how you would want to use your time. But stating that as a factual matter, the United States, I guess, just was here empty when Europeans arrived, seems like a weird way to defend your way of teaching history in the classroom. How do you think that exchange came off in Florida?
That exchange, and there's been several instances where DeSantis makes these kinds of claims that obviously are clippable, like I was saying. But the difference here is we had Crist coming back and being able to kind of debate him. And that was something that was new, because usually it's just DeSantis at press conferences, like kind of talking to the crowd and saying, here's what I have to say. And there's not this response. And we saw the response from Crist here. And when it comes to the response of the crowd, it was very loud and somewhat distracting, some would say.
Do we know anything about the crowd composition? Because I know, for example, when Bernie Sanders did a Fox News town hall where people were very receptive to Medicare for All, there were accusations that he had stacked the crowd, which wasn't actually true. And there's sometimes a sense of whether one side or the other has managed to get kind of like a louder cheering section. Do you think the kind of feedback that we're hearing in the room was reflective of what's going on in the state, or do you think it was rigged there at all?
I don't necessarily think it was rigged. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some kind of imbalance there, but it was interesting because each issue that they would switch between, it was the same kind of like boos or ahs from the crowds. It wasn't necessarily just one candidate that was getting that kind of feedback. And I think the loudest they got, though, was on that abortion topic, which would obviously be coming from Crist's side of the crowd.
There's been lots of reporting in the media that suggests DeSantis consciously models the way he talks, the way he debates after Donald Trump in a sort of move to have the same kind of support among right-wing people that Trump has. I think this debate is most interesting in that, I obviously expect DeSantis will win the gubernatorial race, and then I expect him to seek national office. So it's interesting because you're right, he doesn't do a lot of debates. It's interesting to see how he would handle someone like Joe Biden, or maybe someone like Donald Trump, even before he gets to a Joe Biden. What was he like from a command the room kind of debate perspective? Is there truth to him modeling himself after a Trump?
I would say that he definitely has a different style, but I was actually watching his debate that he did 4 years ago when he ran for governor, and that race was close, and his style changed a lot, and I could see that being modeled after Trump, but I think that might just be also that's kind of the Republican rhetoric sometimes is to be combated. But we also saw that from Charlie Crist, which was interesting because Charlie Crist is he's a well-seasoned politician who has been through 3 of these gubernatorial debates already. So
right. As a Republican previously.
Yes. And we even had someone that I was speaking with who was an analyst last night who had debated Charlie Crist in the past and was saying, he's good at this, he's practiced this, he's a well-oiled machine when it comes to these debates. And I think DeSantis was off-putting sometimes, but I wouldn't say necessarily that he took exactly the rhetoric that Trump did, say, when he debated Hillary. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Can't wait to see them on the stage at the same time.
Yeah, it should be really interesting, especially I'm curious to see how DeSantis' response to the abortion question plays, because again, he didn't actually answer the fundamental question that I think is on a lot of voters' minds, which is, are you going to support a ban on abortion, instead pivoting to this argument that a 15-week-old fetus is fully formed, which is obviously not true.
Well, isn't that suggesting that he supports a kind of 15 weeks policy?
Absolutely not.
I don't know. That's what Youngkin supports. That's what other.
A ban on abortion, a ban on abortion totally was the question at hand, as like the ban that Lindsey
Graham. He didn't say that he did.
No, he dodged the question entirely. He didn't say, no, I don't support Lindsey Graham pushing for a 15-week, a full abortion ban, a national abortion ban. And I think that given the inconsistency of Republican pledges on this issue for years now, saying that they would uphold Roe and wouldn't come for Roe, obviously that wasn't true, has led a lot of people to not take any of those representations seriously. But we appreciate you joining us today, Libbey.
Thank y'all so much for having me. It was great.
We'll have more Rising for you right after this.